Of all the methods available to decontaminate laboratory waste, autoclaving is one of the easiest and most effective. Autoclaving combines heat, steam and high pressure to kill biological agents. It's important to note that some biological agents are more robust than others. For example, bacterial spores and prions. Pre-treatment with disinfectant, increased temperature, pressure and contact time may be required to neutralize such agents. Different combinations of temperature and contact time are used depending on the types of materials being sterilized. A fundamental requirement is the need for the heat to penetrate throughout a load. Dense loads, or ones with high organic content, are hardest to sterilize because they resist the penetration of the steam and heat. Glassware is the easiest because there is a lower load density and it traps heat within the contents. Steam is generated at the beginning of a cycle, delivered either by boiling water in a reservoir or injecting piped steam, depending on the type of autoclave and facilities available. The autoclave cycle consists of 3 phases. In the heat-up phase, temperature and pressure are raised to preset values. Some autoclaves create a partial vacuum during this phase to help steam penetrate the load. During the dwell time or holding time, the autoclave maintains a constant temperature and pressure to ensure sterilization. During the cooling down phase, heat and pressure are allowed to fall to ambient levels. In some autoclaves, there may be an assisted cooling function to reduce the overall cycle time. Some typical autoclave parameters are 115 Celsius for 30 minutes, 121 Celsius for 15 minutes, or 115 Celsius for 60 minutes. These are all validated to achieve sterilization of most biological agents, assuming sufficient penetration. But spores and prions may require higher temperatures and/or pre-treatment. The dwell time may be increased to ensure sufficient penetration in denser loads, or generally as an additional precautionary measure. In modern autoclaves, there is usually a safety thermal lock, which prevents the lid or door being opened at scalding temperature. If the autoclave has a printout that displays the temperature, it may display the sterilization cycle as a graph or as the temperatures actually achieved. These may fluctuate slightly above and below the set temperature, but this is normal as the heater pulses, so long as it achieves the average over the time period. When the autoclave is serviced, this will be checked and validated. It's important to note that when autoclaving bottles, either full or empty, it's advisable to loosen the caps to ensure that pressure differentials don't cause them to break. Waste to be autoclaved must be packaged such that steam can penetrate the entire load. Plastic autoclave bags must be loosely taped, ideally with indicator tape, and not tightly bound. These should then be placed in autoclavable boxes to contain their contents, as the plastic bags may melt and leak. Some packaging, such as paper autoclave bags, often used for sterilizing small items like steel coupons and spatulas, is designed so that the steam will permeate through the packaging, which remains completely sealed. Appropriate PPE, such as a laboratory coat and gloves, and eye protection for handling liquids, should be worn when handling waste and when transporting waste to the autoclave. Items should not be stacked on top of one another, as this prevents steam penetration, unless there is shelving or baskets to create space between the items. The autoclave cycle should be verified before first use and periodically thereafter to make sure the cycle parameters are effectively killing the microorganisms handled in your laboratory. Some autoclaves can be fitted with load-sensing probes, which can be inserted into the center of a dense load to monitor temperature and verify that sterilization temperature has been achieved. Chemical indicators, such as autoclave tape, use heat-sensitive ink that changes color when it reaches a set temperature. This is a useful indicator, but it's only checking the temperatures on the outside surfaces, not the contents, and it doesn't tell you if the required pressure and dwell time were achieved. Another method of verification is to put a broth culture of an appropriate biological agent through the autoclave cycle. If subsequent attempts to grow the biological agent from the autoclaved broth fail to produce growth, then the autoclave cycle has been shown to be effective. Biological indicators, such as spore strips or discs, may also be used to provide verification. Their robust nature means that if they are killed by the autoclave cycle, then most other biological agents will be killed by the same cycle. Spore strips or discs are generally placed at various locations within the autoclave to ensure that all areas reach the required parameters. They can also be placed within a typical autoclave load, although it can prove difficult to extract them from the load when the autoclave cycle is complete. The recovered strips or discs are placed in liquid broth and incubated. No growth after a set time period, such as 48 hours, would mean the autoclave cycle is effective. Autoclaves must be well maintained to make sure they perform as required. This increases productivity and reduces downtime. Routine in-use maintenance includes making sure any water reservoirs are kept clean and filled with water, and are regularly checked for signs of wear and tear, such as corrosion. The temperature profile of each autoclave load must be checked to make sure that the sterilization conditions have been achieved. This is important as, if the waste has not been sterilized, other people handling the waste post-autoclaving are at risk of exposure and subsequent potential infection. Autoclaves should be serviced at least annually and tested by a specialist contractor who can make sure the set temperature and pressure cycles are accurate and check the overall condition of the autoclave. This is important because of the high pressures at which they operate. Because of these high pressures, in some countries it is also a statutory requirement for autoclaves to be tested by an independent pressure systems assessor. If there is a power failure, or if the autoclave breaks down during a sterilization cycle, the autoclave should not be opened straight away. Instead, attempts should be made to fix the autoclave and repeat the cycle. Only if it's not possible to restart should the autoclave be opened and the incompletely autoclaved waste removed. The waste removed from the autoclave may still contain live biological agents, so you will need to wear the same PPE that you used when loading the autoclave. This waste must be suitably contained for storage and should be labelled to indicate that it is unautoclaved waste. If the waste needs to be sent elsewhere for sterilization, it will need to be suitably packaged for transportation in accordance with the UN model regulations. Once the waste has been removed, if access to the autoclave chamber is required for maintenance or repair, the inside of it should be wiped down with an effective disinfectant. In summary, good practices when using autoclaves include: wear appropriate PPE when loading and unloading. Verify cycle parameters are being achieved by checking temperature profiles and use load sensing probes where possible. Ensure steam penetration by taping bags loosely and not tightly packing or overfilling the autoclave. Loosen lids of bottles before starting the autoclave. Use autoclave boxes or tins to contain any melted items or liquids. Use chemical and biological indicators to check that cycle parameters are effective for the biological agents you are handling. Have a regular maintenance program in place.